The wind blew hard across the prairie, carrying the scent of dust and a storm that was still miles off. In the distance, the silhouette of a lone rider cut across the fading orange light of day, galloping through the endless expanse of dry earth. His horse's hooves were a steady rhythm against the quiet, but that rhythm faltered when he saw her. She was crumpled against the weathered fence near the edge of his property. Her body, twisted at an odd angle, gave no sign of life. The dark brown of her hair blended into the dirt, but the blood staining her blouse was a sharp contrast against the setting sun. Her face was streaked with tears, and her hands clutched the wooden slats as if she had tried to hold herself up before collapsing. He had seen enough of this kind of thing in his life to know what it looked like, someone who had been left for dead. But it was the sound that made his gut tighten, a soft, broken sob that trembled through the stillness of the air. For a moment he froze. His name was Sam Carter. A man who had spent most of his life hiding from the world, tucked away in a small homestead at the edge of nowhere. He had his reasons. People, town folk, the law, they all brought trouble. His hands were rough, his past was darker than most cared to know, and he had kept his distance from it all for years. But now, that very same trouble was sitting in front of him, crying like a wounded animal. "Hey!" Sam shouted, his voice sharp, but his boots never moved. There was hesitation in his tone, like he was unsure whether it was worth getting involved. But when the girl looked up, locking eyes with him, he couldn't look away. She didn't speak. Her lips were pale, trembling, as if she couldn't summon the strength to form words. Her gaze, wide with fear, swept across him, then quickly turned towards something behind her. Her body tensed, and for a second, Sam thought she might run. But she didn't. Instead, she collapsed forward, her arms barely managing to reach the ground before she fell still. "Damn it!" Sam muttered under his breath. He moved quickly now, closing the distance between them. His heart raced, his boots crunching against the dirt as he knelt beside her. As his hand hovered near her back, he could feel the tremors of her breathing, slow and labored. It wasn't good. She was close to death. He lifted her into his arms, cradling her against his chest. Her face was warm with fever, and her lips cracked as she gasped for air. There was no time for hesitation. No time to wonder about why she was out here. No time for anything other than getting her inside. But as he turned, something caught his eye. From far down the road, he saw dust rising in the distance. A rider was approaching, moving fast. And just like that, the air seemed to grow colder. Sam's heart skipped a beat as he watched the rider. There was something about the way the dust kicked up that made him uneasy. Whoever was coming wasn't slowing down. The hooves drummed like thunder against the earth, a sound that churned the air and seemed to echo in Sam's chest. He didn't have time to think about it. He had to get the girl inside, keep her safe, get her away from whatever was coming. But as he made his way toward the house, his instincts screamed that this wasn't just any passerby. There was something about the urgency in their approach that didn't sit right. The girl's body stirred in his arms, and he glanced down at her pale face. Her eyes fluttered open, just for a moment, and she caught his gaze. Her lips parted, and in a whisper that barely escaped her throat she said, "They're coming. They'll find me." The words sent a cold chill through Sam's spine. He had dealt with his own troubles over the years, but this wasn't something he could ignore. He'd seen the aftermath of too many hunts, and too many people forced into hiding. And from the way she looked at him, Sam knew she wasn't talking about a group of friendly travelers. His house was closer now, a crooked wooden structure that felt like it was more part of the land than anything man-made. The door was within reach, but the rider was getting closer, his form coming into sharper focus against the darkening sky. "What's your name?" Sam asked, his voice low but urgent, keeping his eyes fixed on the approaching rider. The girl tried to respond, but the words came out as a ragged breath. "Emma," she said between gasps. "Emma. Landon." Sam wasn't sure what to make of her words. Landon? The name didn't mean much to him, but there was something about the way she said it that made his heart twist. He couldn't shake the feeling that her past, whatever it was too close to his own. He didn't want to get involved in whatever storm had come her way. But looking down at her, broken and vulnerable, something inside him shifted. A deep sigh escaped his lips. "You're safe now. I'll get you inside." But just as he turned to step forward, he heard the unmistakable creak of a saddle, a voice calling out behind him. "Hold up there!" Sam's body stiffened. He knew that voice. It was a voice from his past, a voice he hadn't heard in years. He turned slowly, and there, riding in with a confident swagger, was Clint McAllister, a lawman from the nearby town. Clint's eyes narrowed when he saw Sam holding Emma. His lips curled into a slight sneer. "What's this?" Clint asked, his hand resting casually on the grip of his revolver. "You planning on making trouble, Sam?" Emma's eyes locked onto Clint, and Sam could see the terror that flashed across her face. It wasn't the look of someone just afraid of a lawman. It was the look of someone who knew trouble when she saw it. "Clint," Sam muttered, shifting Emma slightly to keep her out of sight. "I'm not looking for trouble. I'm just helping her." Clint's gaze flicked between Sam and Emma. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Helping her, huh? Well, I reckon I'd best take a look at the situation." Sam took a step forward, blocking Clint's view. "I said she's fine. No need for you to get involved." Clint's eyes hardened. "You don't get to decide that, Sam. I think I'll have a word with her, see what she's doing out here alone." Emma's body tensed at the mention of Clint's approach, and her hand weakly reached for Sam's sleeve. The look of desperation on her face sent a wave of tension through him. Sam's mind raced. He knew Clint. He'd always been a man of the law, but the kind of law that didn't exactly bend to justice. He was the type to ask questions later, with his fists or a gun. "You don't want to do that," Sam said quietly, his hand inching toward the Colt on his hip. Clint's lips curled into a grin, but there was no warmth in it. "And why's that?" Emma's breathing grew more erratic. Her eyes darted around, and for a split second, Sam thought she might faint again. But before he could react, she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Please, don't let him take me." Clint, who had been inching closer, now stopped dead in his tracks. His gaze shifted between Sam and Emma, and something dark flickered in his eyes. "What's going on here, Sam? You better tell me the truth, and you better do it quick." Sam's pulse quickened. He was holding the girl in his arms, but now the question wasn't just about getting her to safety. The question was whether Clint was going to walk away, or whether this was going to turn into something much worse. And with Clint so close, that wasn't just a question anymore. It was a ticking clock. The tension in the air thickened, a storm on the verge of breaking. Sam could feel the weight of Clint's stare, the man's boots firmly planted in the dirt, as if daring him to make the next move. But Sam wasn't stupid. He knew Clint's type, always looking for a way to stir trouble, always watching for a reason to flex his authority. This wasn't just about Emma anymore. This was about control, about power, and Sam could feel it in the cold steel of Clint's eyes. "Sam," Clint said, his voice low and even, "you and I both know that this isn't your fight. It never is. So tell me why I shouldn't just drag this girl back to town myself. You know what they'll do to her." Emma's body trembled in Sam's arms. She squeezed her eyes shut, like she couldn't bear to face what was coming. The desperation in her face was almost enough to break him. Sam's gaze flicked over Clint's shoulder, searching the horizon, but all he saw was the same empty stretch of land. "You don't know what you're talking about, Clint," Sam said, his voice steady but with a quiet anger just beneath the surface. "You don't know anything about her." Clint's eyes narrowed, and he took a step closer, now just a few feet away. The standoff was palpable, each of them measuring the other's next move. Sam could feel his hand twitch toward his revolver, but he didn't want it to come to that. Not here. Not like this. Not over a girl who had already been through hell. "You're right," Clint drawled, his grin stretching wider. "I don't know a damn thing. But I reckon the folks in town will be mighty interested to find out. Might be worth a little chat, don't you think?" Before Sam could respond, A sudden gust of wind blew across the open plains, kicking up the dust and sending a chill through the air. For a moment, the land seemed to hold its breath. The distant sound of hooves echoed once more, and Sam's gaze snapped to the horizon. Clint turned his head just slightly, his posture stiffening. Sam's pulse raced as he watched Clint's expression change. Whatever it was coming from the distance wasn't just a passerby. It was something bigger. Something more dangerous. The rider, silhouetted against the fading light, was moving fast. A cloud of dust rose behind him, and as the figure drew closer, Sam's heart sank. He recognized the man, the same man who had been haunting his nightmares for months. Landon. Sam's breath caught in his throat. He couldn't believe it. The rider coming up fast wasn't just some stray cowboy or drifter, it was the very man Emma had been running from. Landon had found her. Sam, Clint said, his voice dripping with malicious amusement. You're not gonna want to miss this. Sam's instincts kicked in. He shifted Emma in his arms, trying to hide her behind the fence, out of sight. But it was too late. Landon was already too close. The man pulled up his horse just a few yards away, his dark eyes locking onto Sam. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and his face was weathered from years of rough living. A scar ran along his jaw, a permanent reminder of the violent life he led. His hand rested easily on the hilt of his pistol. Well, Landon said, his voice a gravelly whisper of smoke. Looks like I've found what I was looking for after all. Emma whimpered, her body shrinking back against the dirt as though she could somehow disappear into it. Sam's jaw clenched. You need to turn around and leave, Landon. This is over. Landon's lips twisted into a cruel smile, but his gaze didn't move from Emma. Over? I don't think so. She's mine, Sam. You can't hide her forever. Clint's voice cut through the tension. She's been trouble for weeks, Sam. We were all wondering when you'd get tangled up in this. I guess now we know. Emma's eyes flicked to Clint, terror flooding her face. She seemed to shrink back further, clutching at the fence, as if it might be her only lifeline. You should listen to your friend Sam, Landon said, dismounting with a fluid motion. She's got a price on her head. And there's a lot of people who'll pay good money for her. A lot of good, bad men. You don't want to be standing in their way. Sam's hand rested near the grip of his revolver, but he didn't draw it. Not yet. There was 1,000 things he could do, run, fight, beg, but none of it would be enough. Landon was no stranger to violence. Neither was Clint. Sam had spent enough time trying to avoid both of them, but now, everything had come crashing down on him. Leave her alone, Landon, Sam said, his voice thick with resolve. This isn't your fight. Landon's smile deepened, and for a moment he said nothing. He simply stood there, waiting. Watching. Then, almost too casually, he said, I don't think you understand, Sam. She's not just some girl you can hide. She's a liability, and I'm taking her back where she belongs. Without warning, Clint moved, his hand snapping to the holster at his side. Sam's eyes flicked between them. He was caught in a deadly trap, and he knew it. The sun was dipping lower, the shadows growing longer, and in that moment, the air felt heavy, thick with impending violence. He had no idea what would happen next, but Sam could feel the weight of the world pressing down on him. Would he fight to keep Emma safe? Or would he have to make a choice that would change everything? The answer was coming, and it was coming fast. The air was thick with tension, so heavy that Sam could hardly draw a breath. He stood there, face to face with Landon, while Clint hovered nearby like a vulture waiting for the right moment to strike. It wasn't just the men in front of him that Sam had to worry about. It was the storm that seemed to be brewing within him, a storm that could swallow them all whole. Clint's hand was still on the revolver, but he wasn't making any moves yet. Landon's eyes, cold and calculating, flicked back to Emma, still trembling behind the fence. Sam could feel the weight of her fear in the air, like a tangible thing that clung to the earth. But it wasn't just Emma who was afraid. Sam was afraid, too, though he wasn't sure if he was more afraid of Landon, Clint, or the dark part of himself that had been lying dormant all these years. Sam, Emma whispered, her voice hoarse and fragile. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. I never wanted to. Sam shook his head, silencing her with a soft, almost imperceptible gesture. He wasn't sure what she had meant to say, but he could see the shame in her eyes, the burden she was carrying. The girl had been running for far too long, and whatever she had done, or whoever she had been to, had left scars on her soul. It was as if she believed this moment, this violence, was all she deserved. You didn't bring this on yourself, Sam said quietly, his voice rough from the weight of it all. He took a step closer to her, crouching so that his face was level with hers. Her eyes met his, wide with fear, but also, just beneath that, a flicker of hope, however faint. For a moment, it was just the two of them, and the world seemed to narrow down to a single, fragile moment. Emma's breath hitched, and she reached for his hand, her fingers trembling as they brushed against his. Sam didn't pull away. Instead, he took her hand gently in his, holding it as if he could somehow protect her from what was coming. The simple act felt like a promise, one that he wasn't sure he could keep, but it was all he had. Landon watched them, his posture relaxed but with a dangerous edge. Clint, however, was growing impatient. You two done having your moment? Clint's voice cut through the silence, sharp and almost mocking. He was itching for something to break the stillness, eager to put an end to whatever drama was unfolding. But Sam couldn't take his eyes off Emma. In that brief silence, he realized something profound. She wasn't just someone he could save. She wasn't a lost cause or a victim. She was a person, someone who had seen the worst of the world and still managed to cling to something, however small, that could bring her back from the edge. Sam knew the law. He knew violence. But what he didn't know was how to be anything but a man running from his past. Emma had given him something he hadn't had in years, a reason to stand and face what he had been avoiding. Not just for her, but for himself. I'll handle this, Sam said, his voice steadier than it had been all evening. You don't need to take her. Not today. Not ever. Landon's eyes hardened. You think you can stop me, Sam? I think I already have, Sam replied. The words hung in the air, thick with defiance. But as he said them, a strange calm settled over him, like a long-forgotten memory surfacing from the depths. The weight of the gun at his side felt different now. The choice ahead of him, as dangerous as it was, seemed clear. And then, just as quickly as it had come, the moment of connection was broken. Emma's hand slipped from Sam's, and she turned to face Clint, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and something else, something closer to acceptance. I can't hide anymore, she whispered. They'll find me. They'll never stop. You don't know what it's like. Her voice trailed off, but the pain in her words hit Sam like a fist to the chest. He hadn't known what she'd been running from, but he knew enough now. She wasn't just afraid of Landon and Clint. She was afraid of the world itself, of being hunted, of being nothing more than a mark to be erased. In that moment, Sam realized that he couldn't save her from everything. But he could at least make sure she had a choice, even if it meant standing between her and the people who wanted to destroy her. Landon took a step forward, his hand still resting on the hilt of his gun. You don't know what you're getting yourself into, Sam, he said. She's a runaway. A fugitive. And she's worth a whole lot more dead than alive. Clint shifted his weight, eyeing Sam, but there was something different in his gaze now, a flicker of uncertainty, like he didn't quite know where this was headed. Sam's chest tightened as he looked at Emma one last time. She was trembling, but her eyes were locked onto his with an intensity that told him she was ready to make her own decision. Do you trust me? He asked quietly. She nodded, her eyes glistening with a mixture of fear and something deeper, something Sam could almost grasp. And that was all he needed. But as the wind howled again and the sun dipped lower behind the hills, Sam realized that the moment of peace they had shared would soon be shattered. The world was about to demand a choice, and Sam could already hear the heavy footfalls of fate drawing near. The moment Sam stood tall, it felt like the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for the next step. Landon's eyes narrowed, and Clint's hand tightened around his gun as the standoff stretched, dragging on like the final seconds before a storm broke. Sam's heart pounded in his chest, but there was a strange peace in his stillness. He had made his choice. He would not back down. Not now. Not for anyone. You've got two choices, Sam, Landon said, his voice slow and deliberate, like a predator testing its prey. You hand her over to me, and we walk away, or you make this harder than it needs to be. Sam's eyes never left Landon's face. The man was a hunter, a killer, and his words were empty threats meant to break Sam. But Sam didn't break anymore. He hadn't for years. And this time, he wasn't going to let someone else decide his fate. You're right about one thing, Sam said, his voice low but steady. This could be harder than you think. But I'm not handing her over. Not to you. Not to anyone. Landon's fingers twitched toward his holster, but before he could make a move, Clint stepped forward, hands still on his gun. The lawman's gaze flicked between Sam and Landon. A slow smirk crept onto Clint's face, but it was tinged with something else, a strange hesitation. Sam's right about one thing, Clint said, almost reluctantly. You're wasting your time, Landon. Landon looked at Clint like he was an ant beneath his boot. You don't get to decide this, Clint, he spat. You and your damn rules. Clint didn't flinch. I don't have to decide it. The law's already decided. You're not taking her anywhere. The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. The sound of the wind, the horse's restless shifts, and the soft thud of Sam's heartbeat were the only things that broke the silence. But in that moment, it was clear, Clint, for whatever reasons he had, wasn't going to let Landon win today. Landon's eyes flicked to Clint, then back to Sam. For a moment, he said nothing, his lips curling into a smile that was anything but friendly. He took one step back, a slow, deliberate retreat, but his eyes stayed locked onto Sam. This isn't over, Landon growled, his voice seething with malice. I'll find you, Sam. I'll find her. And when I do, there won't be anyone left to stop me. With one final glance at Emma, Landon turned his horse around and rode off into the dust, his figure disappearing as quickly as he had appeared. The air, thick with tension only moments ago, began to settle into something quieter, more manageable. Sam exhaled, the weight on his shoulders lifting for the first time that evening. His legs felt weak, but he held steady, glancing over at Clint, who was still watching him, his stance rigid. You're damn lucky I was in the mood for some mercy today, Clint muttered, his voice low and hard. Sam didn't answer. There was no need to. Clint wasn't a friend. He wasn't an ally. He was simply the lesser of two evils in that moment. And that was enough. Emma, her face pale but her eyes still bright, stepped toward Sam. She hesitated, her hand reaching for his once more. This time, Sam didn't pull away. He took her hand gently, his fingers brushing hers with the quiet touch of someone who knew the weight of unspoken words. I don't know what to say, Emma whispered, her voice full of gratitude and confusion. You saved me. Sam didn't reply. There was nothing to say. The words weren't needed. He had done what he could. She was safe, at least for now. Clint's voice broke through the quiet again, this time softer, less menacing. You've got a long road ahead of you, Sam. And I don't know if the law's gonna leave you in peace for long. But I'm willing to look the other way, for today. Sam nodded, but his thoughts were elsewhere. He didn't need Clint's forgiveness. He needed a place for Emma to heal, a place where she could rebuild. They both needed time. Time to find what they'd been searching for, what they had lost. And maybe, just maybe, a chance to make it through the storm that was still coming. As the last of the daylight faded and the stars began to prick the sky, Sam led Emma toward the barn, the one place that felt like a home he had never fully allowed himself to believe in. The wind had died down, but there was a stillness in the air now, a quiet after the chaos that promised peace, at least for the moment. They sat inside the barn as the night settled around them. Sam offered her some water and a blanket, and for the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to take a breath, to feel something other than the tension of the past. Emma sat across from him, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the lantern. Her hand still gripped his, but this time there was no fear in her touch. Just quiet relief. "Thank you," she said again, her voice filled with a rawness that Sam didn't know how to answer. The night passed slowly, but it was the kind of slow that felt like healing. The kind of slow that only came when everything was put into perspective. Sam didn't know what would happen tomorrow. He didn't know if Landon would come back or if Clint's mercy would run out. But for tonight, at least, they were safe. Years later, when the memory of this night would resurface in his mind, Sam would remember the weight of Emma's hand in his, the softness in her eyes, and the quiet promise that they had both made in that barn, sitting together as the world outside remained a place of shadows. And the last thing he would remember was the barn door slowly creaking in the wind, a distant sound that carried with it the promise of a future, fragile but alive. And somewhere, under that vast sky, the land seemed to whisper that they had made it through the worst of it. For now, at least.